Chapter 4 is all about the different forms of business ownership. And so I think it has a lot of great information and it's a good base on leading into chapters 5 and 6. Chapter 5 focusing on entrepreneurship, and then chapter 6 more on management. But chapter, 4 laying that base of different types of business ownerships will help bring some of that, bring to light when it comes to chapter 5 and jumping into entrepreneurship. So I think you will enjoy. But there are three main forms of business organization, if you will, that include sole proprietorship, partnerships, and corporations. All right. And each form has its own advantages and disadvantages. All right. And so I'm going to get into each of those different types, and depending on the different types of businesses, different forms of ownership will be better for some, while others will be better for others. So I'm going to dive in. So your book starts by talking about the advantages and disadvantages of sole proprietorships. All right. So sole proprietorship has one owner. All right. So if Billy Bob owns a grocery store and he's the only owner. Typically, they will start out as a sole proprietorship. Now, later you can incorporate and do all that, but we'll get into that. All right. So the advantages of sole proprietorships include several things. So the ease of starting. All right. The low cost of starting or formation. The owner's rights to all profits. So the owner gets all the profits. The owner's control of the business. Usually they have quite a bit more freedom from government regulation. There's not a lot of special taxes. And if the owner is ready to dissolve the business, the ease of dissolution is there as well. Disadvantages of sole proprietorship would be the owner's unlimited liability for debts and personal absorption of all losses. So any debts that the business incurs, the owner's responsible for. So difficulty in raising capital. It's harder to raise money and have that money. A lot of people will say it takes money to make money. In a lot of cases, that is true. Technology is making that a little bit easier to not be as true, but it is true. And it's harder to raise money if it's just you. Limited managerial experience. When there's just one, you don't have that diverse experience that comes to play. Difficulty in finding qualified employees. It's a very big personal time commitment that sole proprietorships are. And a lot of times you will have more of that not stable or unstable business life because you are the sole person trying to do most of the things, especially when you're starting out. So that's kind of covers sole proprietorships. All right. So then we get into partnerships. And the advantages of partnerships would include, again, like a sole proprietorship, that ease of formation, more availability of capital, right? Because you've got at least two, because the partnerships are more than one owner. So at least two owners. And there's different types of partnerships. There's limited partnerships and general partnerships are typically just 50-50. And then, so if Billy Bob and Jane own a business together and they're general partners, they have 50% stake in the business, each of them. A limited partner would be more like, let's say that somebody owns a business and I choose to be a limited partner. Maybe I just am going to have 10 or 15%. A lot of times those limited partnerships are more just for financial reasons, and they typically don't have, control of the business or say so when it comes to making decisions or anything like that. They are just kind of doing it for financial help, and will get a portion of that back. Hopefully more if it's a good investment, but more than they invested anyways. And so going back to, again, they've got more capital typically, more diverse managerial skills and expertise, more flexibility when it comes to responding to changing business conditions, no special taxes, kind of like sole proprietorships, and again, a little bit more freedom from government regulations as well, just like sole proprietorships. Disadvantages include unlimited liability for general partners. So, if you have a general partner and they do something that is upsetting to the business, maybe they do something that loses money, maybe they, whatever that may be, you are responsible for that as well. There's always that potential conflict between the partners, right? You have to share your profits in a partnership. It's a little bit more difficult to dissolve that partnership if y'all decide that it's time for the business to close. Again, they can be formed as a general partnership or as limited, like I explained. And so that's kind of the gist of partnerships. Lastly, we have corporations, all right? A corporation is a legal entity chartered by a state, all right? And typically it is chartered by the state you live in, but not always. Sometimes businesses go to other states to start a corporation. Its organizational structure includes stockholders who own the corporation, a board of directors elected by the stockholders to actually govern the firm, and officers who carry out the goals and policies set by that board, right? So stockholders can sell or transfer their shares at any time and are entitled to receive profits in the form of dividends, all right? So there's advantages of corporations, and that, include limited liability. So typically you are only liable for the portion that you have actually bought or invested in. Ease of transferring ownership, unlimited life tax deductions. One more that I'm not thinking of. The ability to actually attract financing. So typically corporations, it's easier for them to get financing. Typically they have more income coming in. Disadvantages include double taxation of profits, the cost of complexity of formation. So it's typically more expensive to form a corporation. It's also a lot more complex. There's a lot more government restrictions when it comes to corporations. All right. There's other different forms or options for business organizations. And when I was talking about corporations, I was specifically talking about public corporations. But businesses could also form LLCs or limited liability companies. They can also do co-ops or cooperatives, joint ventures, franchises, which I've kind of mentioned before. An LLC provides liability for its owners, but it's taxed like a partnership. So it's kind of the best of both worlds when we talk about that. So those two features really make an attractive form of business organization for many small firms. So there are a lot of times businesses will start out as a sole proprietorship and then kind of migrate or turn into an LLC, and you can change that later on. Cooperatives are collectively owned by individuals or businesses with similar interests that combine that to achieve more economic power. Cooperatives distribute all profits to their members. Two types of cooperatives are buyer and seller cooperatives, also known as co-ops. A joint venture is an alliance or two of two or more companies formed to undertake a special project. So an example, years ago, Ericsson and Sony formed a joint venture to come up with a specific product, the Sony Ericsson phone. And it was many years ago. So, but if you're familiar with that, that was part of a joint venture. They can be set up. Joint ventures can be set up in various ways through partnerships or special purpose corporations. And by sharing that management expertise, technology, products, and financial and operational resources, companies can really reduce the risk of new enterprises or when starting new enterprises. Your book also talks about franchising and what makes franchising an appropriate form of organization for some types of businesses, and why does that really grow in importance. As your book talks about, franchising is one of the fastest growing forms of business ownerships. It really involves an agreement between a franchisor, the supplier of goods or services, and a franchisee, which is the individual or company that's buying the right to sell the franchisor's products in a specific area. So with a franchise, the business owner does not have to start from scratch, but buys a business concept with a proven product or service and operating methods. So the franchisor provides use of a recognized brand name, product, and operating concept, as well as management training, financial assistance, advertising, all of that types of thing. Franchises can be costly to start, and operating freedom is very restricted because the franchisee must conform to the franchisor's standard procedures, all right? So the growth in franchising is attributed to its ability to expand business operations quickly into a new geographic area with limited capital investment. So when we're talking about franchises here, again, like think about McDonald's, Starbucks, Wendy's, all of these places, these are all types of franchises. Chick-fil-A, so there's just all kinds that we are familiar with. So something to kind of think about when it comes to franchises or buying into a franchise. It is definitely limited into the fact that you have to abide by their rules. You can't just come up with your own products to sell. Everything, they want to be consistent, if you will. It also talks in your book about mergers and acquisitions and how and why they're important to overall growth. So in a merger, two companies combine to form one company. In an acquisition, one company or investor group just buys another one. Okay. So in acquisition, one company is acquiring another. There would just be one company. A merger, two companies combine to form just one company. So companies merge for strategic reasons, really usually to improve overall performance of the merged firm through, cost saving, eliminating overlapping operations, improving purchasing power, increasing market share, reducing competition, etc. And then desired company growth, really, broaden product lines, additional products, and just the rapid acquisition of new markets, technology, management skills. There's all kinds of motives as to why companies merge. Another motive for merging is financial restructuring. So I'm sure that we have all heard about this or familiar with it. So cutting costs, selling off units, unfortunately laying off employees, and just refinancing the company to increase its value to its stockholders. And in your book, it talks about 3 different types of mergers: the horizontal mergers, vertical mergers, and I'm leaving off one. Oh, conglomerate merger. Sorry. In the horizontal merger, companies come in at the same time in the same industry, and they usually are combining for like economic power to really diversify or to win that greater market share. So that's a horizontal. So companies in the same stage, same industry. A vertical merger involves the acquisition of a firm that, serves an earlier or later stage of the production or sales process, such as a supplier or a sales outlet. I always kind of think of maybe a potato, Idaho, like potato company, and a French fry, a McDonald's or something that makes French fries, kind of think of it that way. Conglomerate merger, unrelated businesses coming together to reduce risk through diversification. And then, the end of this chapter, again, talks about different trends that will affect business organizations for the future. And it just kind of talks about how Americans are getting older, but really continue to open those new businesses, from sole proprietorships to partnerships, corporations to franchise operations. And the service sector is also really booming, especially in today's world with our technology. E-commerce is a big thing too. And but the service sector is really booming, to meet that demand for like fitness and health and, even, elder care, all kinds of things, are trending and just constantly evolving when it comes to business ownership and, different businesses that are starting. And it's just kind of awesome to see. But anyways, that is kind of a wrap on chapter 4.